Welcome to the Mya Duboyce Podcast. Thank you for watching. Again, I appreciate you just coming on and watching us live or watching on the replay. The reason that I have started doing the life insurance industry is back in 2021. I had a incident that, of course, the little postcards that you get in the mail. I sent one back in. Okay. Afterwards, of course, you get those phone calls, you get the knocks on the doors, ignore them. Well, lo and behold, about April of 2021, they came to the house, and Roy and Ariel came in and they knocked on the door, and I was like, not a good day. They said, okay, let's make an appointment. And I said, well, what is this for? And they said it's to discuss your options for life insurance. Okay. And if you happen, that's all they said to me. And I was like, okay. So then we made an appointment. Of course, my house was in a disarray at the time. I had 5 adults, an infant, and 3 dogs, and one that was still in school. Of course, they were like, well, they asked the questions that we all want to not answer. We want to avoid. We want to, put it off. So we began to talk about what I had put in the postcard for. And I said, my husband, I'd like to get more life insurance. He does have a policy through work. And so at that given moment, we talked about that. And then they asked the question, do you have life insurance? Do your children have life insurance? And I said, yes, I do. I explained how much I had. And Roy asked another question. Have you had that evaluated? Are you sure you have that current policy? And I was like, yes. So, of course, we make another appointment because I had something going on right after. And at that appointment, about a week and a half later, we make the phone call. And it was Farmers. And at the time, you only know what you know. You can only do what you do. Okay. So we looked at things, and when we called them, of course, they took over the phone call. They had permission from me. They asked the questions. How much value is in it? What is the policy limits? What are your cash value? Is it a term? Is it a whole life? And then just begin to go through those questions. And come to find out, I did have a term policy. And then I also had a whole life that had some money on it, but not a whole lot. Had like $400. I paid on it for almost 10 years. I was like, what? Why not? And so in the instant, we began to look. We began to go, what's best for my family? We talked about health conditions. We talked about, the different things. Yes, it took about 3 weeks. And that is one of the reasons why I went with who I went with as my agent, because he took the time to explain to me what was wrong with my previous policy and what I needed. And so in the long run, I ended up with a policy on myself and a policy on my daughter. And then, of course, we had a policy on Lucas. We did end up getting an accidental and death policy on Tom because I wanted to make sure that my home was secure. Sometimes we don't think about those kinds of things, and with the accidental, it was cheap, it was inexpensive. So let's talk about this. When the what if happens, I was talking to a friend, and just the other day, she had a family member pass away. And she was like, this is so bizarre because of, they had to become the statistic with the GoFundMe. And when that happens, you have all kinds of things that can happen. You can have people that say, "Oh, why didn't you help me? Why didn't you do this?" And so there is an options. You have people out here, and I'm not saying anything against State Farm. I'm not saying anything against AAA. All of those are good. You just want to have an agent and working with an agent, okay? Because when you're working with an agent, there's two things that can happen. Number one, they care. Number two, typically, they're not out for the money. They're out to help you. They're out to be not your best, not like the best buds with you, but they're out to help you with all information. They're out to do what's best for you. They know what underwriting it looks like. They know what policy. They're not cookie cuttering what you have. They're not saying, okay, let's give you this. They're asking the questions. So even when you call, the lines, and you call in and you get those that, you've seen an ad on the TV. We've all seen those kinds of ads. We've all seen and heard that, and you get the agent, and then you're just like, why do you have to ask all these questions? Well, number one, is to get to know the circumstance so they can know what is best, what options, what is, whether you go with Transamerica, whether you go with Mutual Omaha, whatever you might go with, that then helps them to point you in the right direction of what carrier. Sometimes you can, you know, get a cheaper policy doing it differently, and so when it comes down to working with someone with the life insurance industry, yes, they do seem a little pushy. Yes, but they're also trying to build some trust. That's the number one thing that I love to do with all of my clients. Each and every client that I've had is that you can trust me, that when I say that I'm going to call you back in 2 days and check into it, I get back to you. That was something that impressed me with Roy and Ariel being was they took the 3 weeks to look into my medications. They took the time because the first one, of course, declined me. And I'm like, well, why did it decline me? What did it decline for? And so we had to do that research. I'm not saying that everybody out there is going to be on that same line of, okay, you got to do research, but at the same time, it's needed. We all cover our cell phones. We all do homeowners. We do car insurance. Okay. And a lot of times we look at life insurance as it's an option, you know. And I love to work with people that go, no, it's not an option. I want to be involved. I want to make this decision, not just with being a term policy or a whole life policy, you know, even for those that, they travel. It comes down to, do you want to have a legacy, or how do you want to pass on? What do you want to pass on the remembrance of? And a lot of times when you're speaking with agents, yes, it's sensitive information. Yes, it's hard. And I know it's hard because I was like, why are you asking these questions? What do you need them for? And it's because so much is gone to the background of checking and knowing and being able to tell and look it up. Look at the medications. Look at how everything is in life, and it's so, even with like the underwriting, there's ones that you can have a decision within minutes. There's ones that, takes a little longer, but those are the ones that care. If you are watching this again on replay, or if you are watching this live, I appreciate you. I see you. If you have any questions or anything that I can help you with, I would love to speak with you. I if you have any questions and you want to put them in the feed, I would be willing to, chat with you for a few minutes, see if there's something that I can help you with, and be able to just dive a little bit deeper into with you. And then I hope everyone has a wonderful Tuesday evening and everyone stay safe. And thank you for watching.